Hello, this is Intuitive Momentum Fitness, week 73, and I'm a couple minutes late, so hopefully I didn't throw you off if you were checking the page to see when I'm going live. And I've been wearing these blue light filter glasses during the mornings and evenings, and not as much during the middle of the day, but I'm experimenting with wearing them more often. What they do is filter out the blue light, which most electronic lights don't have the red spectrum in the light, and so the chemicals in the body actually respond to the type of light and the spectrum of light that your eyes look at. And the light of the rising sun is different from the noonday sun, and that's different from the setting sun. And so it all communicates to your body where those chemicals are supposed to be at, what levels, and which ones are, expanding, which ones are diminishing. So most electronics are blue light heavy, and kind of give more of a signal from the noonday sun, even though it's kind of distorted. So I'm playing with that. Some people have experienced some amazing health benefits to being mindful of their light exposure. So that's what the glasses are about, and I'm trying to wear them more often when I'm looking at electronics. So today we're talking about living from personal agency, and I've been thinking about this because I think most everyone has experienced some level of trauma, some level of, whether that is abusive trauma or accidental trauma, like an actual car accident. But most trauma happens in childhood, and there's that statistic from The Body Keeps a Score by Bessel van de Kolk, and he's the leading expert on PTSD in the world. And he said that for every soldier that comes home from war with PTSD, 10 children are growing up with PTSD in their homes. And so whenever something is long-term or ongoing, or the trauma is ongoing, like throughout an entire childhood, like mine, it's called complex because there are layers and layers and layers to it. So it's not just a one-time accident or an explosion or a horrible incident, which is terrible, but it's like a way of living. And so it's got layers upon layers. So a lot of us that grow up with childhood trauma, there's a piece of us that is still waiting to be directed, waiting to be guided, waiting to be shown the way. And I feel like this is where a lot of disillusion comes from hearing people's stories. It's an interesting human habit to create a formula from a story. It's like, okay, so my Aunt Betsy did such and such, and that worked for her in this way. So I'm going to do that same thing as if what she did was a formula, and then see if that will work for me. And obviously, there are elements of that, anecdotal evidence. If something is working for a whole bunch of people, then maybe it'll work for you. But we do tend to turn things into formulas. And one example is, which I actually want to write a book about, but the fairy tales. And so people get very disillusioned with the fairy tales and complain about how these stories were presented to the young children and idealized romance and patriarchal type situations and all that stuff, when if you really look at the story and then the origins of the story and all that stuff, things are significant for certain reasons within times in history and context of culture for their novelty. So, the novelty of a prince choosing someone for love rather than for political interest, like in Cinderella, or a beast allowing love to make him more human again. These are really fantastical stories, especially for the times they were written in. And they were never meant to be an ideal or a formula, but just a very amazing story. And so, we have this habit of turning things into stories, even from what someone else said, or, a lot of times someone will have very limited experience, but one thing worked for them, so they try to get everyone else to do that one thing when there may be a whole bunch of other factors involved that they're not thinking of. So it needs to be looked at from a bigger perspective. So I think as a result of childhood trauma, growing up with parents who were not healed themselves and were operating from wounded places, and we didn't have parents who knew how to parent and who knew how to parent themselves and knew how to be whole and healthy themselves, there's a part of us that is still that child self that desires to be guided by wise parents, by healthy parents. And we keep waiting for someone else to direct our lives for us, in a sense. So living from personal agency is remembering that there is no one on the planet more responsible for me than me. No one with more agency over my life than I have. No one that can make those decisions and agreements about my life like I can. So how do I want to live? How do I want to feel? How do I want my body to look? How do I want my relationships to feel? How do I want to bring in finances in ways that I love? Doing things that bring me joy. How am I going to use my free time? So no one else gets a say in that more than I do for my life. So that is what this quote by Diamond, I believe, made me think of. And so this quote says, "I hope you will walk on this journey knowing that you belong. I hope even if things sometimes do not go your way, you will not stop trying. You will not give up on yourself and on your toughest days." And on your toughest days, I hope you will keep reminding yourself of this. You are loved and you are worthy, even when you don't feel that way. So I'll read it again. I hope you will walk on this journey knowing that you belong. I hope even if things sometimes do not go your way, you will not stop trying. You will not give up on yourself. And on your toughest days, I hope you will keep reminding yourself of this. You are loved and you are worthy, even when it doesn't feel that way. And I do think that it is the trauma that we experience, the unhealed adults that brought pain into our lives and hardship that cause us to feel like we're still waiting for our parents to show up. and we are our parents. And our parents had their own struggles and challenges and traumas and things, and it's time for me to be loved by me. It's time for you to be loved by you, and to be there for you when no one else can. And so to take ownership of your life. So what I wrote with that was the foundational piece to all of this is knowing that you are responsible for your life, or you have full agency over your life, and there is no one more in charge of you than you. So what do you want? What do you need? What do you desire? What goals and intentions do you have for your body and health? What kinds of relationships do you long for, and how do they feel? What passions or hobbies bring you joy? So a few of you responded, and I'm excited to dive into those responses, as they were really, really good. So Susie says, freedom and independence are big things around many of these questions. That doesn't mean I want to fly solo in all things always. It's more about let me be me, let me do my thing without direction or correction. Don't pigeonhole me or limit me or hold me back. Don't try to imbue me with fear or irrational thought, even in an attempt to protect me. That's beautiful. And I want to stop and say that that is kind of a core element of what I believe the word sovereignty to be. And I realize that that word comes with baggage because of what it has meant over the years, there being a sovereign and then subjects. But we are all sovereign. We all rule our own lives. And being able to claim that for yourself means that you hopefully are in a position where you respect that for others and you desire that for others. So I don't want to own anyone, and I really don't want anyone to own me. And having experienced that for the first 22 years of my life, that's just something I refuse to experience again. Even when that muscle isn't super strong all the time, and I feel like I have to really practice claiming and owning my personal agency, my personal power. So when Susie says, don't pigeonhole me or limit me or hold me back, don't try to imbue me with fear or irrational thought, even in an attempt to protect me, I resonate with that, I relate to that. And I think as we claim our personal power, people have less ability to do those things. And it's an interesting time. I think fear makes us want to control each other. There is a I think, an ingrained instinct to try to get approval and agreement from everyone in our lives. And so some people are more skilled at respecting everyone's personal beliefs and preferences than others, but it's really about me allowing other people to disagree with me. It's okay. Like, you don't have to agree with me. I am choosing these things for my life. And I know not everyone is going to choose these things for their life, and that's okay. But I choose those things, and I respect myself regardless of what anyone else does. And I also support your position to have complete agency over your life and to choose things for you. Even in areas that we're super passionate about, like I am passionate about health and fitness. I grew up with extreme fatigue, inability to build muscle. I got weaker and smaller when I tried to work out. And I've spent 19 years since I was 22 with that huge quest in my life, other things as well, but that huge quest of trying to be as learn as much as possible as I can about health and strength and energy and nutrition and living from a positive mental space. So, when people come to me, they'll usually have a simple question. They expect an answer right away, but I don't want to answer them right away. I want to ask more questions and learn about them and get a feel for who they are and what their life is about and what works best for them. So, and then the other thing that's kind of humorous a lot of times is that people, because my life is focused on health and fitness, then they assume that I'm judging them automatically for not focusing their life on health and fitness. And I've had that through the years, but one funny situation was one of my coworkers that I still work with on occasion at the lodge. He's an IT guy, so he comes through every once in a while when we've got issues with the music or whatever. And so many times when he sees me, he'll just point a finger at me and tell me, "Don't judge," because we had a conversation way back when we first met about him not watching what he ate. I guess he felt intimidated by my physique, and because we weren't really even talking about fitness, but it was really funny. And so then ever since then, he just points his finger at me and says, "Don't judge." And it really highlighted to me how people feel. Like I've been allergic to sugar since I was 17, and it seems to never fail whenever dessert is being passed around, and I'm like, I don't care for any. I'm allergic to sugar. And then everyone gets super self-conscious, starts justifying why they're eating it, and apologizing to me and all this stuff. And I really don't care. If I could eat dessert without consequences, I'm sure I would be. So this whole idea that Susan is talking about, Susie, wanting the freedom, desiring to not be controlled, to not be pigeonholed, to not be held back. I so relate to all of that, and especially because in all different areas, like in education and things like that, my dad did hold me back for years and years over the first more than 2 decades of my life. And so I'm, very allergic, very sensitive to anyone who tries to control me in those situations. So just want to stop and say all those things there. So back to Susie. As for health, I want to make as healthy of choices as I can to stay active and independent as I age and to prevent chronic diseases. Brilliant. Hobbies are mostly dancing, swimming, and fitness, but my latest yen is to be in the ocean more, bodyboarding. And I would someday like to teach dance to adults, maybe do another open water swim, travel more, have adventures, work again in science. So I love those things. It's kind of a little bucket list, and I think that sometimes we can put too much pressure on ourselves when life is overwhelming. There was a guy that told me, and there's some wisdom in it. He said, I was talking about, hey, someday I want to do this, and he was like, someday was a week ago last Tuesday. And he was like, don't wait for someday, just do it now. And there are certain things that you can do that with, and I think it's great to pursue what you can pursue. Like if you can make things happen, do it now. Don't wait for someday. But I also think that sometimes circumstances are limited. And so what do you do when you have these desires for these things? Like you said, I would someday like to teach dance to adults, maybe do another open water swim, travel more, have adventures, work again in science. So you can't necessarily just suddenly do all those things when your life is already full of things that you're doing now. But I have seen and experienced and heard the wisdom of keeping those things in your mind. Like have pictures out, have reminders, have things out that remind you, yep, I'm going to do that one day. I'm going to do that one day. I'm going to do that one day. And you just keep ruminating in that. And energetically, and we know that the heart is 5,000 times more magnetic than the mind, than the brain. Energetically, as that like seeps into your system and your energy and your heart, like you're going to be drawing those things into your experience, and pretty soon you're going to realize, whoa, I'm doing the things that I wanted to be doing, and it'll flow naturally. So keep focusing on that. Keep reminding yourself of those things. So yeah, thanks for that feedback, Susie. That was great. And then Papa Chuck says, I have never liked the word responsible. It can have a lot of negative connotations to it. I do like knowing that I have leadership over my life and being in charge, that is to a point, LOL. So then he goes on to say some other things, and I'll get to that in a second, but I did want to respond to that. And it is amazing, we use words to communicate thoughts and ideas, and I've heard the saying, when someone says something, there's what he thinks he said, there's what the listeners think he said, and then there's what he actually said. And sometimes there's even more versions of that. So, being able to understand intention and context and all of that is tricky. And then also understanding, what your listeners may be feeling when you say a certain word. It was for a long time toward the end of my being a Christian, where I didn't want to talk about God a lot because God meant so many things to so many different people, and different people had, different experiences with that word, and it's very, very loaded and can trigger things that I didn't intend to trigger by using that word. And so it's really about knowing your audience and how they're going to hear it in order to make your words most accurate. So Chuck, I totally get that. Responsibility can be used against you in really heavy ways by people, often controlling people that want to shame you or make you feel guilt for not doing things the way that they thought you should do things. So I get that. And leadership is a good word. Being in charge seems to be good. And then agency is a word that I've also started using. That could sound very corporate or industrial, I suppose, but personal agency means like, this is my jurisdiction. I have jurisdiction over my life. I have agency over my life. So, so hopefully we can find ways of communicating that are effective and help us be heard and hear each other. So then Chuck goes on to say, what I wanted and desired 10 years ago is so different than now. And the reality of aging, having relationships, my desires, all are befuddled these days. I'm entering a whole new era of my journey, trying to figure it all out. I'm grateful that I'm stronger now, that I don't have to worry about what others think or say about me. I just love me and do me, being true to myself and let love guide me along the way. This is definitely an interesting, unpredictable chapter I never saw coming. Yeah, it is amazing how life can turn out in certain seasons way different than we ever thought or imagined, and we are kind of starting from scratch in those moments to reimagine who we are, how we fit into the world, how we connect with others, our changing goals and intentions, priorities, values, all those things. So I love your vulnerability with this, your rawness, your humility, and acknowledging that all these areas just feel befuddled at the moment. So I love what someone suggested. I can't remember who that was now, but a lot of people talk about having a passion in life, a purpose, and some people do have very specific, lofty purposes for their life. But someone suggested that if you don't have a clear purpose, just find and do the things that bring you joy, because that's your purpose. And I think of nature, like animals and trees and flowers. They just do what their instincts lead them to do, and the flower blooms, the trees grow tall, the sun rises, animals eat what tastes good and look for ways to live and thrive, and they enjoy the moments, certain animals more than others. Think of the otter that's just like super playful, takes naps in the water, has little pet rocks that they carry with them in their pouches, and they just like play with their rocks. It's kind of amazing. So sometimes like when life is overwhelming and unclear, coming back to simplicity of finding joy is a really beautiful thing. So thanks, Chuck, for all of your communication and sharing that post. I better get some water. So Andrea, she's responding specifically to my questions. So what do you want? I just want to be happy. There are way too many things that make me happy to list, even the tiniest and simple things. So it's almost easier to list what I don't want, which is negativity, control, closed-mindedness, and dishonesty. What do you need? I have everything I need right now. What do you desire? See below in relationships. What goals and intentions do you have for your body and health? I like the way my body looks with clothes on, but I have a lot of cellulite that has always been there since teenage years, despite having a slim-ish appearance, and would like to firm up somehow. That's great. So sometimes those personal goals, that's really beautiful and vulnerable of you to share. And if you can almost just hear the responses of people, oh, don't worry about that, or whatever. And that's true. Like, no one else should be thinking about that or worrying about that. But sometimes we do have those personal goals and those desires for our bodies. Over the last 19 years, I've been working specifically towards certain goals that I've had for my own physique, beyond just strength and being healthy, but I would like my body to look a certain way and have a certain appearance. And some of those I'm still working toward, and some of those I'm getting close to or have reached or whatever. And anytime I talk about them with other people, they tell me I'm way too ambitious or way too critical or whatever. And I can appreciate the encouragement toward self-love and all of that, which I think is always important. I think you can have both at the same time. You can, be in love with your body, with yourself, and have desires for it. And so, I really respect that you have specific goals for yourself and that you are on a quest to reach those goals, regardless. And so that's what I'm insisting on as well. It's like, I don't believe that my desires for my body are impossible or unrealistic or any of those things. And I do intend and choose to love myself regardless, however, at whatever point I'm at. And even if I don't ever reach some of those goals, I'm going to love myself along the way. But I still will be moving toward those things that I desire. And I feel like it is a inborn right, inherent right that we have to choose things for ourselves and to make those adjustments. So good job for you doing that and pursuing that desire. So what kinds of relationships do you long for and how do they feel? I've always been sort of a loner and do-it-myselfer and haven't really felt like I needed other people exactly, mostly because I feel misunderstood by most people. That's relatable. So it's easier to be my own best friend. But the older I get, the more I do cherish relationships with supportive people and realize that maybe I do long for kinship and, dare I say, close relationships. The past 2 years of my marriage were unbearable. So for the last 2 years, I've thought that I would just be happier alone and never get married again. But on this road trip I am on right now with my kids, I have found myself longing for someone my own age to share this type of adventure with. And there have been some romantic looking walks and trails I would have loved to be holding hands with someone on. I did enjoy skipping down sand trail with my kids, but that is a different kind of happy experience. So I have realized that I do desire a life partner or companion someday who is equal to me and travels on my same wavelength. And I can really relate to that. I've thought about those kinds of things since I was a little kid, thinking, this would be great to share with someone, and finding myself alone most of that time. So I relate to that. I also relate to the fear of not being in a good situation with someone else, trying to control or manipulate or whatever it is, energy drain. So I understand that side of it too, and in those moments that I'm really grateful to be mostly alone. But then, if you could find someone that's like healthy and likes being around you, that's amazing too. So all the best in those areas to you. So then last one from Andrea. What passions and hobbies bring you joy? Being creative in many forms, all sorts of various crafts, and I used to love to sew and to paint, but lack the time now. Hiking, walking in nature, enjoying details found around, such as stopping to smell the roses and things like that. So, that's cool. So knowing those things that bring you joy, even when you don't necessarily feel like your life has an overarching purpose, that is purpose. Making time to do the things that bring you joy, the things that you love, that help you calm down, that regulate your nervous system. Just like the flower seems to find joy in the simplicity of blooming and just being beautiful, we can find joy in being wherever we are and doing the things that bring us joy, whether that is drawing or painting or sewing, hiking, walking, enjoying nature. For me, pickleball. So appreciate all that feedback, Andrea. That was really, really good. So one more here. Tom actually just posted in the group, separate from this comment, but I wanted to include it here because he has some great thoughts and some questions, and if you guys have some thoughts, then definitely go to his post and reply to him. So Tom says, I'm curious if anyone else here has added intense workouts to intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting has been life-changing for me. I started with the 16 to 8 method, 16-hour fast, 8-hour feeding window. And now I'm experimenting with 17-7 and 18-6. So as much as 18 hours fasted with 6-hour feeding window. I love how much more energy and focus I have, but I also have to move more slowly with weightlifting and HIIT cardio, high intensity interval training cardio, because I prefer working out in a fasted state. My body is still adapting to this approach. I'm fully aware of the fierce debates on fasted exercising and have friends on both sides of it. I'm curious to know what your experiences have been, though. Also, props to Kyler for setting up this group. The book he just published is one of the best I've read on healthy approaches to achieving fitness. Thank you, Tom. So, I love this question and this quandary about intermittent fasting, and pairing that with weightlifting and high intensity interval training cardio in a fasted state. So So yeah, a lot of my clients have found great success with intermittent fasting. A lot of friends as well. Pairing it with more intense workouts is definitely tricky, and that is one of the things that I feel like guides whether it works for you or not, or how it works for you, is getting that feedback, kind of balancing your goals, because some of the studies have shown that you do get similar results from intermittent fasting as from restricted calorie intake, which is just means watching what you eat, making sure you don't, eat more than your body actually needs in a day. So the studies have shown that intermittent fasting has similar results as restricted calorie intake, or just watching what you eat to make sure you don't overeat. But there are some studies that should suggest that intermittent fasting has additional benefits as far as the chemical signals that are sent to the body through the fasted state. And so like levels of growth hormone and stuff like that are supposed to be higher for those doing intermittent fasting. So there are some additional possible benefits to that. On the other side, I've seen trauma therapists who are also in the fitness world, including Dr. Irene Lyon, who is an athlete and a fitness, she's intense about her own fitness, but she's also clinically trained trauma specialist, therapist. She doesn't recommend intermittent fasting for people who have experienced trauma and still have emotional flashbacks and things like that, because the body being in an activated state, a lot of times the nervous system being activated, it will it's looking for stability, it's looking for reassurances, it's looking for consistency. And so being in a fasted state can signal to the nervous system that you're in danger, depending on the person, depending on the situation. So it's not necessarily ideal for everyone. So my specific response to your question here, Tom, is it sounds like you were in a great groove doing the 16 hours fasted with 8-hour feeding window, and now experimenting with making that feeding window smaller, and you're enjoying more energy and focus. But you're also noticing that you have to move slowly with weightlifting and high intensity interval training, and your body is still adapting. So one possibility is that as you continue to do it, and you continue to experiment with the weightlifting and the high intensity interval training in a fasted state, that perhaps your body will adapt, or perhaps your body will kind of react in a activated nervous system, and maybe it won't be that great for you. Or I don't know when in the day that you are doing your workouts, but one thing I would suggest experimenting with is doing your workouts right before the beginning of your feeding window so that you don't go long after your workout fasted. So you do the workout fasted and then move into your feeding window immediately after that. So that would be something to play with. Try a few weeks of that, see how that feels. The other thing some people do is I've heard this specifically with the bulletproof coffee, where they add butter to it, so you're getting fat, and fat obviously gives you energy, but it doesn't do anything to your blood sugar levels. So another thing to experiment with, if exercising right before your feeding window starts, is to have some fat. So maybe experiment with that. Have a little bit of fat before your workout, and that might be tricky because you could do the bulletproof coffee if you do coffee, or if you do, I think it's cachava or something like that. There's like some different coffee alternatives. So things like that you could experiment with. It would be kind of weird to have a slice of butter before your workout, but you could try it if you wanted to. But yeah, because having fat doesn't affect your blood sugar level, it doesn't necessarily change the way your body is operating in the fasted state. So that may be the one thing that you could play with if you do need some energy and some support before your workout. So if anyone else has done intermittent fasting and combined it with weightlifting and high intensity interval training, then be sure to jump on Tom's post and give your feedback, your experience there, because I think that would be helpful for all of us to learn from experiences. So that's the one thing that I've done. I've been, so I think it's the 24th. This is weird that I know this, but like I've asked my mom, I've always known dates, but the 24th of August will be 16 years since I started working at the YMCA and got into fitness. And so you're welcome, Kristen. I'm glad you find it helpful. So I have been teaching and training for almost 16 years, but I'm always asking my clients and random gym members and people that I know, like if they're doing a specific routine, I'm asking them, what's your experience with that? If you do intermittent fasting, what have you experienced? If you are trying a certain training method, whether it's like the 5x5 or drop sets, or Mike Menser's approach, or whatever it is, a training method, like tell me what you notice, what you experience with that, and that has helped me learn over the years what seems to work for certain people, and just kind of help me understand how broad everything can be in nutrition and strength training and fitness and all of that. So so carry on the conversation. Don't feel like your experience is too unusual or anomalous to have relevance. Like, we can all learn from each other. So please respond to Tom and let us know what you have experienced there. So if you have any other thoughts or questions, feel free to comment here and I'll respond, or post in the group, or send me a direct message if you need some assistance. So hope you guys are well. I hope you're having a good week, and much love and joy and peace to you as you finish out the week. Talk to you soon.